Where are you watching us from? Write in the comments.
They say ignorance is bliss. I believed it until the night my whole world came crashing down. One text, one careless mistake, and suddenly the woman I trusted with my life was a stranger. I didn't react right away. I didn't scream or demand answers. Instead, I did something far worse. I watched. I collected every lie, every betrayal, and when the time came, I let it all out. If she thought I was going to sit back and take it, she had no idea who she was dealing with. This is the story of how my wife cheated on me and ended up with nothing and less. 8 years of marriage, 2 beautiful kids, a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood with a white picket fence. On paper, my life was perfect. Anyone looking in from the outside would see a successful man with a loving wife and a happy family. And for the longest time, I believed that, too. I worked as a manager at a mid-sized logistics company. Long hours, stressful days, but the paycheck was good. It paid for our comfortable life. My wife, Christina, stayed home with the kids, handling the household, making sure everything ran smoothly. That was our arrangement, and for years it worked. She was always warm, affectionate, the kind of woman who greeted me at the door with a smile, who held my hand when we walked together, who whispered, "I love you," before bed every night. But lately, something had changed. At first, it was subtle, a little less warmth in her voice, a little less enthusiasm in her touch. She stopped greeting me at the door, barely looking up when I walked in. The little affectionate gestures, the playful nudge, the absent-minded way she used to run her fingers through my hair, were gone. I told myself she was just tired. After all, raising 2 kids wasn't easy. I worked long hours, and maybe she felt overwhelmed. Maybe she just needed a break. But then it got worse. She started pulling away. Not just emotionally, but physically. She no longer kissed me goodbye in the mornings. When I reached for her at night, she would turn away, claiming she was too tired. Eye contact became rare. It was as if she couldn't bear to look at me for too long. I brushed it off, convincing myself that every couple went through rough patches. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was going through something she wasn't ready to talk about. Then came the irritability, the coldness. She started snapping at me over small things. How I loaded the dishwasher, how I folded the laundry, how I breathed too loudly when I watched TV. The woman who once adored me now seemed to resent my very presence. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. One night, I sat alone in the living room, nursing a beer, staring at the framed photos on the wall. Smiling faces, frozen in time. Christina and I on our wedding day, her eyes full of love. Our first vacation together, arms wrapped around each other, laughing. The birth of our children. The sheer joy in her expression as she held our newborn daughter. Had it all been a lie? I shook my head, trying to push the thought away. I wasn't the kind of man who let paranoia control him. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe I'd been too distant lately, too absorbed in work. Maybe I needed to put more effort into our marriage. I ignored the signs for as long as I could, told myself I was imagining things. That marriage had ups and downs, and this was just a phase. But then, the first real red flag appeared. It was late one evening. I had just come home from work, exhausted. Christina was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, completely engrossed in whatever was on the screen. I greeted her, but she barely acknowledged me, giving a distracted nod. That was becoming normal. I didn't think much of it until her phone buzzed with a message. I happened to glance at the screen. I don't even know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe my subconscious had already put the pieces together before I had. Whatever the reason, my eyes landed on her phone just in time to see her quickly tilt it away from me and press the power button. The screen going dark in an instant. Before I could ask anything, she stood up. "I'm going to take a shower," she said quickly, clutching the phone tightly as she walked past me. I sat there, staring at the empty space where she had been. I had never been the jealous type, never been the kind of man who snooped through his wife's things. I had always believed that trust was the foundation of any marriage, but trust works both ways. And right now, something was off. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she had just been reading something personal. An old friend venting about problems. A surprise she was planning for me. Still, a seed of doubt had been planted. And from that moment on, I started noticing things I had never paid attention to before. Christina had always been a homebody. She preferred quiet nights and over going out. She never showed much interest in fitness, claiming she hated the gym and that running made her knees ache. But suddenly that changed. She started going to the gym 3, sometimes 4 times a week. At first, I was happy for her. I thought maybe this was her way of finding something for herself, something outside of the daily grind of motherhood. But there was something strange about it. She never talked about her workouts, never mentioned what exercises she was doing, never complained about sore muscles. She'd just come home, shower, and barely say a word. Then there was her wardrobe. Christina had always dressed comfortably, jeans, sweaters, yoga pants when she was home. But now, she was buying new clothes, skimpier ones, tight leggings, fitted tops, perfume that lingered in the air long after she walked past. At first, I thought she was doing it for me, that maybe this was her way of reigniting the spark between us. But I quickly realized that wasn't the case. She never dressed up when we were together. If we went out for dinner, she barely made an effort. But the moment she left for the gym, she looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. Makeup done, hair styled, wearing clothes that hugged her body in ways that made men turn their heads. And then there was the phone. It was always with her, never left unattended. She used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter overnight, but now she took it to bed with her, tucking it under her pillow. Some nights, I would wake up to see the faint glow of the screen in the darkness, her face illuminated as she typed away, thinking I was asleep. And every time I stirred, she would quickly put the phone away and pretend to sleep. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking things, that after 8 years of marriage, there was no way Christina would betray me. But my gut told me otherwise. And as the days went by, that feeling only grew stronger. Doubt is a slow poison. It creeps into your thoughts, taints your memories, makes you question everything you thought was real. I didn't want to believe my wife was hiding something. I wanted to trust her, but the way she guarded her phone, the way she dressed up to leave the house, but barely looked at me when we were together, none of it made sense. It was a Friday evening. Christina had been acting strange all day, restless, distracted, checking her phone every few minutes with a slight smile on her lips. The kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. At dinner, she barely touched her food. She kept glancing at the clock, her foot tapping impatiently under the table. Then, as we were cleaning up, she casually said, "I'm going out with the girls tonight." She rarely went out, and when she did, she always told me in advance. But this was sudden, unplanned. I forced a neutral tone. "Where are you going?" She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. "Oh, just a bar downtown. Nothing crazy. Sarah's birthday." Sarah, one of her old friends from college, a name she rarely mentioned anymore. I nodded, pretending not to care. "All right, have fun." She gave me a quick smile, kissed our daughter goodnight, and left without looking back. As soon as the door shut, I exhaled slowly. I wanted to believe she was telling the truth, that she really was just going out with friends. But something in my gut told me otherwise. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, my mind racing. I told myself I was overthinking, that I had no real proof of anything. Then her phone vibrated on the nightstand. I turned my head. She had forgotten it. For the first time in months, she had left her phone behind. I swallowed hard. My heart pounded. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who invaded his wife's privacy. But doubt had been eating away at me for too long. And in that moment, I knew this was my chance to finally get the truth. I reached for the phone. The screen was still lit up from the notification, and what I saw made my entire body go cold. I miss your lips. The message wasn't from a female friend. It wasn't from anyone I recognized. It was from a man. And it wasn't just innocent flirting. This was intimate, personal. I pressed the screen, but the phone was locked. Of course, it was. She had changed her password weeks ago. Another red flag I had ignored. I sat there, gripping the phone, my mind racing. There was no more denying it, no more pretending. Christina was having an affair. She came home late that night, past midnight. Her hair was slightly messy, her cheeks flushed. She didn't look drunk, but she looked different, like she had been somewhere else, with someone else. I watched her as she set her purse down, acting casual. "Hey," she said. No warmth, no guilt, no hesitation. She didn't know I had seen the message. I forced a smile. "Did you have fun?" She shrugged, not even looking at me. "Yeah, it was fine." Then she grabbed her phone off the nightstand, glanced at it, and her entire body stiffened. For just a second, panic flashed across her face. But she recovered quickly, sliding the phone into her pocket, pretending nothing had happened. I said nothing. I just watched her, studied her. And in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't just cheating. She was confident I would never catch her. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions I didn't want to ask but couldn't ignore. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Was it just messages, or had it gone further? I already knew the answer. The way she had been dressing up, the way she had been hiding her phone, the sudden gym trips. She wasn't just flirting. She was meeting someone, and I needed to find out everything. The next morning, I woke up before Christina. The house was quiet. I got the kids ready for school, my movements automatic. My mind was somewhere else entirely. She came downstairs looking tired, rubbing her eyes. "Morning," she mumbled. I studied her carefully. She didn't look guilty. She was comfortable, relaxed, because she thought I had no idea. I forced a smile. "Morning." She kissed our daughter's forehead, sipped her coffee, scrolled through her phone. Just another normal day for her. But I wasn't going to let it be normal. That afternoon, while she was out running errands, I took her laptop. I knew she was careful with her phone, but the laptop, she rarely used it. Maybe she had let her guard down. I opened it, heart pounding. It was password protected, but I knew Christina well. I tried the usual, our anniversary, our daughter's birth date. Nothing. Then I tried her mother's birthday. And just like that, I was in. Emails, social media, bank statements. I started going through everything, searching for any hint of what she had been doing behind my back. At first, there was nothing, and then I found it, a deleted email. The subject line was simple. "Last night was amazing." I clicked on it. The email had been trashed but not emptied. Dan, that was his name. And the words inside the email made my blood run cold. "I can still feel your lips on mine. When can we do it again?" I gripped the laptop so hard I thought I might break it. This wasn't some innocent flirtation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was real. Christina was sleeping with another man. I could have confronted her right then, could have thrown the laptop in her face, demanded answers. But something inside me stopped. I needed more proof, more details. If I accused her now, she'd deny everything. She'd twist the truth, make excuses, maybe even turn it around on me. I needed irrefutable proof. So I took it further. That night, after she fell asleep, I installed a hidden app on her phone, a keystroke recorder. It was risky, If she found out, there'd be no going back. But I had to know. And within days, I had everything: texts, passwords, call logs, location history, and what I found shattered whatever little hope I had left. Messages, dozens of them. I can't wait to see you again. That dress was for you. Did you like it? I wish I could spend the whole night with you. And then the worst one. I love you. She loved him? After 8 years of marriage, 2 kids, a life we built together, she loved him? Knowing the truth and seeing it with your own eyes are 2 different things. I had the messages, the emails, the proof that Christina had betrayed me. But part of me, some stupid, pathetic part, still wanted to believe it hadn't gone all the way, that maybe it was just words, that maybe I could wake up from this nightmare and find out it wasn't real. But reality doesn't give you that luxury. So I decided to follow her. It was a Wednesday evening. Christina had been acting normal all day, as if nothing had changed, as if she wasn't lying to my face every second. Then after dinner, she grabbed her gym bag. "I'll be back in a couple of hours," she said casually. "Don't wait up." I forced a smile. "Have fun." She kissed our son on the head, waved goodbye, and walked out the door. I counted to 10. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. I kept my distance, careful not to get too close. She drove through town, past the gym she was supposedly going to. And then, just as I expected, she kept driving. My hands tightened on the wheel. Minutes later, she pulled into a small bar, one of those dimly lit places with live music and cozy booths. A place for couples, not for someone who just wanted a drink. I parked across the street, heart pounding. She stepped out of the car, adjusting her dress, a dress she had never worn for me. And then he appeared. Dan. I recognized him immediately from his social media profile, the one I had dug up after finding his name in her emails. Tall, fit, confident, the kind of man who knew exactly what he was doing. And the way Christina smiled when she saw him, the way her entire face lit up, made my stomach turn. She never smiled at me like that anymore. She walked up to him, and before I could even process what was happening, he pulled her into his arms, and she kissed him, right there in public, without hesitation, without shame. A deep, slow, intimate kiss. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. It was real, all of it. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, was standing there, kissing another man like he was her world. And I was nothing. I should have stormed in, should have grabbed her, screamed at her, made a scene. But I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone and hit record. I filmed everything, the way she didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, listening to the quiet hum of the house, staring at the ceiling while Christina slept peacefully beside me, completely unaware that her entire world was about to come crashing down. She had no guilt, no shame. She had kissed another man, held his hand, whispered in his ear, and then came home to our bed like nothing had happened. I wanted to shake her awake, to shove the phone in her face and demand answers. But I didn't, because I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to destroy her. The next day, I acted normal. I kissed our kids goodbye, went to work, came home, and cooked dinner, just like always. And Christina? She was the same as ever, laughing with the kids, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging me. It made my blood boil, but I kept my cool. I waited until the kids were asleep, until the house was quiet. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and called her over. She walked in, looking at me curiously. "What's up?" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us. And then I hit play. The video lit up the screen, her and Dan at the bar. The way she smiled at him, the way she kissed him. For the first time in months, I saw real panic in her eyes. She turned pale, her lips parting slightly as she stared at the screen. Then, slowly, she looked up at me. Don't. I cut her off. My voice was calm. Too calm. Her mouth opened and closed, searching for an excuse, a lie, something to spin the situation in her favor. But there was no way out. I don't know what to say, she whispered finally. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. Try the truth. She swallowed hard, glancing at the phone again, like she was hoping the video would magically disappear. And then, just like that, the tears came. I didn't mean for this to happen, she choked out, covering her face with her hands. It was a mistake. I let out a cold laugh. A mistake? How many times did you make this mistake? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Eric, I was lonely. You were always working. I felt like we were just roommates. I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. Don't put this on me. She flinched, looking at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. You could have talked to me, I said, my voice low, controlled. You could have told me you were unhappy, but instead, you snuck around. You lied. You made me think I was crazy for suspecting anything. She shook her head, sobbing. I love you, Eric. Please, I do. No. I cut her off, standing up. You don't love me. You love the comfort I provide. You love the security. But you don't love me. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I can fix this, she begged. We can fix this. I stared at her, a woman I had once trusted with my entire heart, and felt nothing. No, I said simply. We're done. He looked at him, the way she held his hand, the way they whispered to each other, lost in their own little world. This wasn't just an affair. This was a relationship. I sat there for nearly an hour, watching, filming, feeling my entire life crumble apart. Then, when I had seen enough, I put my phone down, took a deep breath and drove home. Tears, begging, empty apologies. Christina tried everything. After I told her it was over, she followed me around the house, sobbing, pleading, swearing it didn't mean anything, that she had been confused, that it was just a stupid mistake. I let her talk, let her cry, but I didn't say another word, because this wasn't an argument she could win. This wasn't something she could manipulate her way out of. I had already decided how this was going to end. The next morning, before the sun had even risen, I met with my lawyer. I had prepared for this moment, moved my financial assets into a private account, gathered every piece of evidence I needed, screenshots of her messages, emails, location history, and of course, the video. My lawyer didn't even blink when I laid it all out in front of him. With this, he said, flipping through the documents, you'll get full custody. The house stays with you. She'll walk away with almost nothing. That was exactly what I wanted. I wasn't just leaving Christina. I was making sure she felt the consequences of her betrayal for the rest of her life. That afternoon, I called my parents and arranged for them to take the kids for a while. I wasn't going to let them be caught in the middle of this. They didn't need to hear their mother sobbing, trying to manipulate me, trying to twist the situation into something it wasn't. Because Christina wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry she got caught. And she knew she had lost. The moment she saw me packing a bag for the kids, the panic set in. Eric, what are you doing? She asked, her voice trembling. I didn't even look at her. They're staying with my parents for a while. She rushed toward me, grabbing my arm. No, you can't do that. They need me. I turned to face her, and for the first time in a long time, I let her see the full weight of my anger. They needed their mother to be faithful, to respect their father, to not destroy this family. Her lip trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it, because she had no defense. She had done this. She had thrown everything away. And now, she was watching it all slip through her fingers. And then, in the middle of our silence, her phone rang. We both turned to look at it. Dan, Christina sucked in a sharp breath. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone, glancing at me with panic in her eyes. And then she did something I never expected. She answered and put it on speaker. "Hello." Her voice was shaky. For a moment, there was silence. And then Dan's voice came through, loud and clear. "Hey, babe." He bought it. I told my wife everything was just a misunderstanding. She believes me. Now we just have to wait for your idiot husband to calm down, and we can finally be together. No more sneaking around. The air in the room went completely still. Christina turned pale. I just stared at her, and for the first time since this entire nightmare began, she had no words. Dan kept talking, unaware of what was happening on the other end. "I swear, Christina, I thought you were going to screw it up last night. But see, it all worked out. You just need to keep playing the sad wife for a few more days, and he'll come crawling back. Then we can take him for everything." I let out a slow breath. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. "Hang up the phone, Christina." She fumbled with the screen, pressing the button with shaking fingers. We stood there in complete silence. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, there were no fake tears. No more acting. Now, I saw her for exactly what she was. It's one thing to know your wife is cheating. It's another to hear her lover call you an idiot, to hear them plotting against you like you're nothing but an obstacle in their way. Christina stood there, frozen. Her face was pale, her hands shaking, her mouth slightly open as if she was trying to come up with a lie. But there was nothing left to say. Dan's words had sealed her fate. I could have screamed, could have thrown something, could have given her the explosion she was expecting. But I wasn't going to waste my energy. I just looked at her, cold, detached, and then I grabbed my keys. "Where are you going?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't answer, because the only thing left to do now was finish this. I knew where to find him. I had been tracking Christina's locations for weeks. Dan wasn't some mysterious stranger. He was a married man, a man with 2 kids of his own, a man who had no idea what was coming for him. I drove in silence, my grip on the wheel tight. I didn't blast music. I didn't try to calm myself down. I wanted to feel everything. By the time I reached his neighborhood, the sun was setting. A quiet, picture-perfect street. Big houses. Well-kept lawns. The kind of place where people smiled at each other in the mornings, completely unaware of what went on behind closed doors. I parked across the street, watching his house. And then, as if the universe was on my side, there he was, Dan, stepping out onto his porch, stretching like a man without a care in the world, like a man who thought he had won. I got out of my car and walked straight toward him. He turned just as I reached the bottom of his steps, his face shifting from relaxed to confused. Do I know you?" I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone, pressed play, and let him hear his own words. He bought it. I told my wife everything was just a misunderstanding. She believes me. Now we just have to wait for your idiot husband to calm down, and we can finally be together. No more sneaking around. Dan went completely still. His face drained of color. His mouth opened, then snapped shut. And for the first time, I saw it. Fear. I let the recording play out. Let him hear himself call me an idiot. Let him hear himself gloat about how he and Christina were going to take me for everything. Then I hit stop, and I smiled. "You were just a distraction for her," I said, my voice calm. "You should be grateful it was me who found out, and not someone else." Dan swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the street like he was hoping no one else could hear us. Listen, man, I think there's been a..." "No." I cut him off. "There hasn't." I stepped closer. "I know everything about you, Dan. I know where you live. I know your wife's name. I know where your kids go to school." His breathing hitched. "Are you threatening me?" I smiled again. "No. I'm just telling you that if I were you, I'd get ahead of this. Because I'm not the only one who's about to find out what kind of man you are. His face twisted. You wouldn't. Oh, but I would, I said. In fact, your wife should be getting an email right about now, with screenshots, video, everything she needs to make sure you end up exactly where you belong. His phone buzzed. I saw the panic in his eyes, and for the first time, I felt satisfaction. I turned, walked back to my car, and left him standing there, shaking. When I got home, Christina was sitting on the couch, hugging her knees. She jumped up when I walked in. "Eric, please," she whispered. I swear I didn't mean. I tossed a folder onto the table in front of her. Legal papers, divorce filings, evidence. Everything was already set in motion. Her hand shook as she picked it up, flipping through the pages. You already. I'm not stupid, Christina, I said flatly. I've been planning this for weeks. You just gave me the final proof I needed. Tears welled in her eyes. Eric, I'll lose everything. I stared at her, unblinking. You already did. Christina didn't give up easily. After I served her the divorce papers, she went through every stage of denial. First the begging, then the fake remorse, and finally, the anger. But I had expected that. What I didn't expect was how far she was willing to go to try and save herself. Because when a woman like Christina starts losing, she doesn't accept defeat. She fights dirty. She stayed quiet for the first couple of days, probably hoping I'd calm down, that I'd come to my senses. But when she realized I wasn't budging, that I was really going through with a divorce, she snapped. I came home from work one evening to find her sitting at the kitchen table, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. I spoke to a lawyer, she said, her voice carefully measured. I tossed my keys onto the counter. Good for you. She didn't flinch at my indifference. If anything, it made her bolder. You're not getting full custody, she said. I'll fight you in court. I'll tell the judge you're an unfit father, that you were emotionally abusive, that. I laughed, actually laughed, and that threw her off. I walked over to the counter, picked up a thick manila folder, and dropped it in front of her. She hesitated before opening it, flipping through the pages. Screenshots, emails, bank statements, call logs, GPS locations, the entire timeline of her affair laid out in black and white. Her face paled. And then, at the very back of the folder, the character witness statements. From my parents, from her old friends, even from our children's teachers. People who had noticed her growing distance, her frequent absences, her lack of involvement in their lives. A full legal case against her. You're not taking my kids, I said, my voice calm but firm. The court will see everything. And you'll be lucky if you get supervised visitation. She slammed the folder shut, her hands shaking. Her eyes were wild now, darting back and forth as if searching for something, anything to use against me. And then she said it. If you don't back down, I'll ruin you. I raised an eyebrow. How? She smirked, trying to regain control. I'll tell everyone you were the cheater. I'll go online, tell people you were abusive, that you neglected me and the kids. Do you really think people will take your side over mine? I held her gaze, unfazed. Then, without a word, I reached for my phone, scrolled through my files, and played the recording. Her phone call with Dan. Her face twisted in horror as she heard her own voice. We just have to wait for your idiot husband to calm down, and we can finally be together. No more sneaking around. And then Dan's words. Just keep playing the sad wife for a few more days, and he'll come crawling back. Then we can take him for everything. Christina shot up from her chair. You recorded. I recorded everything. I leaned forward, my voice dangerously low. If you try to lie about me, if you try to take my kids, if you so much as whisper a false accusation, I will make sure this recording goes everywhere. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her hands clenched into fists. And then, for the first time ever, she stayed silent. because she knew I wasn't bluffing. She had played her last card and lost. The divorce went exactly as I planned. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge saw right through her crocodile tears, her sudden claims of being a devoted wife and mother. Custody? Mine. The house? Mine. Her settlement? Almost nothing. She stood in the courtroom, watching her world crumble, knowing she had done this to herself. And I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. A month later, on the day she officially moved out, she stood at the doorstep, looking up at me with swollen, red eyes. "Eric, please," she whispered. "I still love you." I stared at her, unmoved. "No," I said simply. "You love controlling me, and now you have nothing." And then, without another word, I shut the door in her face. For good. Christina was gone. The divorce finalized. The house legally mine and the children safe with me. Everything had gone exactly as planned. She tried reaching out, texts, emails, even calling from unknown numbers. I ignored them all. She was desperate, clinging to the last threads of a life she had set on fire with her own hands. But I had moved on, or so I thought. One evening, months later, I was packing up the last of Christina's forgotten belongings. A few old photo albums, some clothes she never bothered to take, and a dusty shoebox from the top of the closet. I almost threw it away without looking inside, but something about it felt wrong, heavy, important. I sat on the bed, lifted the lid, and stared. Inside were letters, dozens of them, neatly folded, tied together with a thin ribbon. Some were old, their edges yellowed with time. Others looked recent, and all of them were from Dan. I picked one at random, my hands tightening as I unfolded the page. "I can't wait for the day we don't have to hide anymore." Another, "He's getting suspicious. We have to be more careful." And then one that sent ice through my veins. "If he ever finds out the truth, we're both screwed." My heart pounded. The truth? I ripped through the letters, scanning line after line, searching for the missing piece. And then, at the very bottom of the box, beneath all the letters, was a single document. A birth certificate. I read the name. Then I read the father's name, and the world tilted beneath me. I sat there, gripping the paper, my breath coming in ragged gasps. No, 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 no. I looked toward the hallway, where my kids' bedrooms were. Everything in me screamed to ignore it, to pretend I never found it. But I couldn't, because now I had one final question. Which one of them isn't mine?